When I picture a millionaire, I imagine someone in their 50s sitting in the back of some Rolls Royce being driven around out of a luxury condo in Beverly Hills. And of course, they have their designer sunglasses on with the latest iPhone in their hand, probably in some sort of deep conversation on some important call. And you probably have the same image in your head, that cliche rich person look that we've seen in movies and TV shows. But in real life, the person sitting across the street in a diner wearing a flannel and eating, I don't know, a Chipotle bowl might also be a millionaire. In fact, there are a lot of Americans out there that have quietly built their wealth and you never know it just by looking at them. Take me, for example. You probably wouldn't have guessed that I made my first million either. In many cases, real wealth is built quietly behind the scenes. A couple weeks ago, I talked about Ronald Reed, who is this janitor, and despite having a blue-collar job his whole life, he shocked everyone when he passed away with an estate worth over $8 million. And his story was so crazy that it made me curious about these quiet millionaires that I decided to look into it and find out what their real habits are that made them so wealthy. If you're new to the channel, hi, my name's Steve. I used to be a public school teacher and now I help people take control of their finances. And in this video, I'm going to show you which habits helped quiet millionaires build their fortunes. Okay, so let's start with the first one. The first thing I noticed is that their wealth wasn't discovered until they had passed away. This means that they weren't flaunting their money. Instead, they made a deliberate choice to live under the radar. Take Robert Morin, for example. He quietly worked as a librarian at the University of New Hampshire for nearly 50 years. He spent his days cataloging books, smoking his pipe on the library steps, and chatting with his students. And I feel like no one would have guessed he had saved over $4 million. It's kind of wild to think how many quiet millionaires are walking amongst us, and they're just people that you never expect. Sometimes when I'm out shopping, I catch myself wondering who here might secretly be a millionaire. It could be the dad with the 2 kids comparing the ramen brands, or the cashier ringing up my groceries. I feel like most people start changing their habits the moment they start making more money. Instead of sticking with the affordable brand, they start reaching for the premium, more expensive version, spending a few extra dollars here and there. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it can quietly eat away at your wealth during the exact time you should be building it. I've seen firsthand that these quiet millionaires avoid this trap. They don't upgrade every time their income goes up. They stick to their frugal habits and save or invest their extra money. And yeah, I know their friends might drive flashy cars or wear expensive jewelry, but they're the ones quietly building an empire. The second habit of quiet millionaires is that they're always learning. They might live simple lives, but they constantly find ways to challenge themselves. Robert Morin was a librarian, so naturally he was an avid reader. But he also challenged himself to read every book published in the US between 1930 and 1940 in chronological order. Of course, he skipped a couple books here and there, like cookbooks and children's books, but by the time he passed away, the university estimated he read nearly 2,000 books. And look, this isn't just some sort of one-off. I've seen the same habit in many of my wealthy friends, where they're always looking for the next skill to learn or a new challenge to take on. They read almost every day, listened to podcasts that expanded their thinking, and consumed high-quality content that helps them grow. And no, they're not spending hours scrolling through Instagram or falling into YouTube rabbit holes. Now, don't get me wrong, we need comfort shows or maybe a few funny videos to unwind. And for me personally, I still rewatch old episodes of The Office when I just want to zone out for a little bit. But I found that when I mix in some useful downtime like reading or listening to something calming, I see way more progress in my life. Back when everyone was binging Squid Game, I was of course watching it too. But once it ended, I didn't just roll into the next binging marathon. I switched things up, like reading some of my favorite books like Atomic Habits, learning about how to build a business through podcasts, or putting on a meditation playlist just to reset for the next day. I truly believe that you'll always see results where you spend your time. And if you're trying to figure out how to take control of your money and not only learn but to take action, I actually wrote a book to help with that. It walks you through the basics from getting out of debt to building good financial habits, and it's the kind of guide I wish I had when I first started out. I'm giving away free copies right now, so if you want one, check out the link in the description and I'll send a copy to you right now. Another habit that I've seen in quietly wealthy people is that they don't buy things they don't actually need. Yeah, I know, we've all been there, standing in the checkout line only planning to buy bread and milk, and somehow walking out with twice as much because we grabbed a few extra items on the way out. Doing that once in a while isn't the end of the world or anything, but if it becomes a habit, your losses start adding up quickly. A lot of quiet millionaires actually ask themselves, do I need this? Not, can I afford this? Grace Groner, who lived through the Great Depression, was a perfect example. She spent her life in a small one-bedroom cottage, and when her car was stolen, she paused and asked, do I really need a new one? And she realized, no, everything I need is within walking distance. So from there on, she simply walked everywhere. Now, I'm not saying that you should live like you're in the 1930s. I'm a big believer in treating yourself once in a while, but it should be intentional, something that you've thought through, not just a reflex decision in the moment. When I was a teacher, and before I always go out to eat with some friends or coworkers, I'd always check the menu ahead of time and pick something within my budget. Whenever friends would ask me to go on a weekend trip with them, I always ask for a day or two to think it through. And whenever I go shopping, and even to this day, I always bring a list and I stick to it. Just giving yourself 1, a little extra time, and 2, planning ahead is all it takes to avoid impulse spending. The fourth habit of quiet millionaires is that they value time and relationships more than material things. Doris Schwartz, a former teacher and flight attendant from West York, lived her final years in a modest, cluttered row house in Philadelphia. When she passed, she surprised everyone by leaving more than $3 million to support education in York County. She didn't need luxury at the end of her life because she had already lived fully. As a young flight attendant, she traveled the world, collected Christmas ornaments from Japan and teacups from all over Europe. And she shared her life with Carl Schaefer, who was this pilot that she met during flights transporting soldiers to Vietnam. They spent decades together and even lived on a sailboat for a while off the coast of Fort Lauderdale. When she spoke with friends, Doris would say, I lived a wonderful life. She didn't end up with the latest flat screen TV or a designer home. What she had instead was a steering wheel from the yacht where she made memories with someone she loved. And I don't know about you, but to me, that's what winning really looks like. She chose to spend her money on the things that made her time meaningful and allowed her to enjoy it with the people who mattered most. And finally, when it comes to investing, the quietly wealthy are famously boring. From what I observed, they're not out there chasing meme stocks or speculating on NFTs or trying to double their money overnight with penny stocks. In fact, a lot of their wealth is actually built on solid long-term assets, things like the stock market or real estate or businesses, things that they're familiar with and trust. And look, they don't invest to impress anyone. They do it to gain more control over their lives. That's why a lot of the wealthy people that I know, they make use of their tax advantage accounts like 401ks, Roth IRAs, and even HSAs. They understand that every dollar saved on taxes is a dollar that can be reinvested. And yeah, they're willing to be patient, sometimes even for decades, while their investments quietly grow in the background. Grace Groner, a secretary from Illinois, worked at Abbott Laboratories. In 1935, she bought 3 shares in the company for $60 each. And over the years, those shares split and grew. And instead of pulling her money out, she reinvested everything. And it's crazy because by the time she passed away, her $180 investment had turned into a whopping $7 million. When I first started investing, I was hooked on the thrill of day trading. I checked prices constantly and tried to time the markets. And yeah, it was exciting, but also very exhausting. And guess what? In the end, it didn't work. I actually lost more money than I put in. Eventually, I shifted to investing in boring S&P 500 companies and index funds. And at first, yeah, it felt pretty dry and pretty dull, but it gave me peace of mind and, more importantly, better long-term results. I also found out that you don't have to be some sort of financial expert or have a PhD in economics or have to be so obsessed over the markets every day to make good investments. Take Sylvia Bloom, for example. She was this legal secretary who made some incredibly smart investment decisions, not because she had insider knowledge, but because she paid attention to what other people did. Back then, secretaries often handled everything for their bosses, including their investments. And Sylvia, she would actually carry out her boss's investments instructions. Then she would quietly invest a portion of her own salary in the same places. And guess what? Over time, those decisions added up. By the end of her life, she had quietly built a fortune of over $8 million. And look, if you want to start investing like all of these quiet millionaires and you're tired of Googling how to invest, my beginner investing class is the answer. I'll go over what accounts to open as a complete beginner, how much to invest based on your age, and what to invest in that helped me become a millionaire. It's kind of crazy because I have over 50,000 people who join my class, and you can sign up to see why. I'll leave the link here or down below, and I hope to see you in class.